On the Hobo road, I roll alone. Stars above that are far from home.
Stage 2, the unraveling. Listless and wanting, each piece unfurls, left on the wayside, leaving only broken remains. Chapter 6, on frustration. Frustration doesn't show up with trumpets. It doesn't storm in the way grief storms in. It builds, it seeps, it sits in your chest like steam in a closed pipe, pressure mounting, rattling the walls. The first weeks of homelessness are shock and survival, fear, adrenaline, sleepless nights, but once you find the rhythm, once you get used to the tent and the tarp and the hustle of scraping by, something else sets in. Frustration, in the sense that you're giving your best and the world is shrugging back, unimpressed. Frustration is the bureaucrat at the desk who sighs when you walk in. You woke up early, walked miles, sat in a hard chair outside their office for an hour, and when you finally face them, they shuffle papers like you're an inconvenience, like their lunch break means more than your next meal. You want to shout to slam the desk, but you don't, because they hold the food stamps, they hold the voucher, they hold the tiny thread between you and complete collapse. So you sit there swallowing your anger, boiling inside, and call it patience, but it isn't patience. It's survival through forced humility, and it eats at you. It's not just the system, though. It's yourself. You think back to the first tarp you strung up loose and sloppy, waking in the night to a sagging belly of rainwater pressing down on the tent. You fixed it. You learned. But even now, months later, mistakes creep in. You miss a step. You forget a detail. You burn food. You leave the zipper open and wake to mosquitoes feasting, and every error costs more than it should. You only have 2 pairs of pants. You only have 1 blanket. You only have so much strength left to make the walk for water. Frustration turns inward. Why aren't you smarter, sharper, tougher? Why can't you fix this life like you fix a tarp? Money makes the insult sharper. If you had money, frustration wouldn't burn so hot. You wouldn't need to beg a caseworker for a card loaded with barely enough food. You wouldn't need to stand in a line where the hours blur together. You wouldn't need to live on the bottom rung, hoping the people above you don't step harder. You feel your irrelevance written on every form. Income 0, assets none. Frustration is knowing that in a society obsessed with dollars, you are invisible. There's irritation too, frustration's cousin. The small things pile up until they weigh as much as the big things. The summer heat cooks you alive, sweat soaks your shirt before noon. You try to stay clean, but with 1 shirt and nowhere to wash properly, you smell yourself long before anyone else does. It feels like failure no matter how hard you scrub at a sink or wipe down with a rag. Your body betrays you, and the mosquitoes laugh in your ear, the traffic hums all night, the guy at the bus stop glares at your pack. Small stupid things, but they all sting. Sleep makes it worse. When you're tired, the smallest task turns monumental. You walk 3 miles for water and curse yourself the whole way. Why didn't you rig a system, build a stash, plan ahead? Why didn't you figure it out? The same with charging your phone, the same with finding a safe corner to rest. Frustration is waking up already mad at yourself, and then having to carry that anger all day like another pack on your shoulders. It feels sometimes like an escape room, but without the clever puzzles. You're locked in a box filling with water. The knob is right there, so you twist it again and again, hoping this time it will turn off the flood. It doesn't. You try lifting it, pushing it, twisting the other way. Nothing works. You pace the room, desperate for another solution, but there is none. That endless cycle, try, fail, try again, fail again, is the drumbeat of frustration. It's not despair yet. Despair is quiet. Frustration is loud. It makes you want to scream, and yet you rarely scream. You swallow it, because to scream at the caseworker is to risk losing your food. To scream at the stranger is to invite a fight you can't afford. To scream at yourself is useless. So the scream stays locked inside, vibrating in your ribs, making your chest ache. Frustration becomes a kind of energy trap. So much fuel, but no outlet. The dehumanizing part cuts deepest. To line up for food stamps is to be reminded that you are a number. To bathe with a rag in a public restroom is to be reminded that you don't belong inside. To sweat through your clothes before noon is to be reminded that your body itself feels like a problem to be solved. And every reminder builds that pressure again, the steam against the pipe. Frustration also comes from the rhythm itself. At first, everything is novel. Every day is improvisation. But once the rhythm sets in, you realize you're maintaining, not progressing. Wake up, haul water, wash clothes, chase food, hunt for shade, find a charge. Repeat. Nothing changes, nothing improves. Frustration grows from the gap between effort and progress. You work harder than you ever worked in your life, and at the end of the day, you're still here. Same tarp, same hunger, same bureaucracy waiting tomorrow. Sometimes frustration is the only thing that keeps you moving. Anger at the grind pushes you out of bed, pushes you down the sidewalk, pushes you to fill out another form, to knock on another door. Frustration becomes fuel, but it's dirty fuel, the kind that clogs your lungs and leaves you coughing. You don't like what it does to you. It makes you sharp with strangers, short with friends. It makes your mind loop on the same thought. If only I were smarter, if only I were better, if only this world wasn't designed to spit me out, and then sometimes frustration just burns itself out. You sit there, spent, staring at nothing, the fire gone cold. That's the danger of it. Frustration feels like energy, but over time it hollows you. It turns you from a fighter into a husk. You rage, but quietly, under your breath. You curse the system, curse yourself, curse the endless cycle, but it doesn't change. That's the bitter truth. Frustration is effort without change, effort without reward, effort without recognition. The world doesn't care how much you sweat hauling that gallon of water back to camp. It doesn't care how many times you retied the tarp to keep the rain out. It doesn't care that you waited 3 hours only to be told to come back tomorrow. And when the world doesn't care, your own caring starts to feel like a waste. And that's the edge of frustration, the point where it risks curdling into hopelessness. But in this stage, frustration hasn't collapsed into despair yet. It's still hot, still restless. You can still feel it pushing against the walls, demanding release. You can still imagine screaming, punching, breaking, though you never do. Frustration is the sign that you're still fighting, still refusing to accept the indignities as normal. It hurts because you still want something better. That's what makes it unbearable, and what makes it human. What makes frustration maddening is the sameness of the cycle. Every day is filled with effort, but the effort buys nothing permanent. You can wash your clothes until your knuckles bleed, and tomorrow they will be dirty again. You can cook a meal carefully, stretch rice and beans into 3 servings, and within hours, you're hungry. You can wait in the office line all day, fill out every form, and still leave with nothing but the promise to come back. It is labor without ladder, motion without progress. Frustration is knowing that nothing you do today will lighten tomorrow's load, and yet you must do it anyway, or fall. And still, you try. That's the strangest part. Even while you know how little will change, you keep pulling at the same broken levers. You stand in line, you haul the water, you scrub the shirt, because not trying is worse. Frustration lives in that space between effort and futility, between wanting the world to bend and watching it hold firm. You're angry at yourself, angry at the system, angry at the air itself for daring to stay hot while you sweat. And yet the fact that you feel it at all means you haven't gone numb. You're still alive in the fight, even if every attempt is met with silence. Chapter 7 on Stigma. Stigma is a shadow that walks ahead of you. It slips into the room before you cross the threshold. It lays across your shoulders even when you're clean and upright, even when you've done everything in your power to look like anyone else. You carry it without permission. You can't wash it off. The word homeless has already spoken for you. People think they're clever with language. Unhoused, houseless, roof optional. They polish syllables and think the shine will erase the dirt, but the shine never lasts. A cop doesn't say unhoused when he writes a ticket. A city ordinance doesn't fine you for being roof optional. The law calls you homeless, the headline calls you homeless, the neighbors whisper homeless, and the word rots inside you until it feels carved into your skin. Euphemisms are air freshener sprayed into a burning house. The fire still eats everything. The faces the public sees are always the loud ones, the drunk sprawled outside the liquor store yelling at ghosts, the camp under the overpass, tents collapsing under trash, the man screaming at shadows until his throat breaks. That's the picture that gets passed around. Chaotic, filthy, hopeless. Nobody sees the quiet ones. The woman who stands in line at the pantry and says nothing, the man who slips into the library, washes up in the bathroom, reads a newspaper until closing, and disappears. The ones in the woods, far from view, scraping together order from disorder. Silence is a kind of survival, but silence never makes the news. Before I fell into this life, I didn't notice the quiet ones either. Why would I? They were hidden on purpose. The only images I carried came from stereotypes. Carts, bottles, muttering voices, open sores. The caricature was enough to satisfy me. Then I crossed over. Then I was forced into the same word. And suddenly I understood. The quiet ones have always been there, holding on without spectacle, erasing themselves so they wouldn't be erased by force. But invisibility comes at a cost. If no one sees you, no one knows you exist. And if they don't know you exist, they don't know the stigma is a lie. Try to explain yourself and the explanation dissolves. You can say, I lost my job, I fell into debt, I left abuse, I cracked under depression, but the details don't survive contact with the label. The moment you admit I'm homeless, the story evaporates. You are no longer a person who endured a sequence of events. You are simply the word itself. Every hardship that led you here disappears. You become the sum of other people's fears. And then the law enters like a blade. Grants pass. Supreme Court, executive orders, layers of language meant to look neutral, but the meaning is simple. Your body is the crime. You are guilty of sleeping, guilty of existing in public, guilty of having nowhere else to go. Public land is not for you. Sidewalks are not for you. Bridges, parks, benches, none belong to you. They tell you to go to shelters, but shelters are cages, stacked misery on top of misery. If you refuse, they say it's your choice. But what choice exists when every door is nailed shut? In a city, you can almost pass. A backpack on your shoulders, sweat under your shirt. You blend into commuters. Nobody looks too closely. But step into a small town with the same pack, the same sweat, and you might as well carry a neon sign. People smell suspicion before they smell you. The eyes cut sharp. A traveler is welcome. A homeless man is not. And they've decided which one you are before you open your mouth. Hotels prove it most of all. Drive in with a car, and you're offered a smile, maybe a mint. Walk in on foot with a heavy pack, and the whole dance changes. Credit card required, cash not accepted, deposit demanded, 2 forms of ID, maybe 3. They don't say you look homeless, but the wall has already been built. The words are unnecessary. The sight of you is evidence enough, and stigma doesn't just cling outside. It seeps inward. After enough refusals, enough recoils, enough nights where you're rousted and pushed further into the margins, you start to hear the whisper inside your own chest. Maybe I am less. Maybe I don't deserve more. The poison spreads quietly. You push against it, but it's there every morning. Shame sits heavier than the backpack. There are moments when you almost believe you've escaped. A cashier smiles as if you are just another customer. A stranger doesn't recoil. A brief flicker of normalcy, but then a look shatters it. A step back, a hand covering a nose, a clerk wiping the counter after your touch. Stigma doesn't need words. It speaks in the tiny movements that say you don't belong here. Hope dies faster than it blooms. Dreams betray you too. You dream of a door that locks, a bed that smells only of you, a kitchen where your food waits untouched. In the dream, you're just a person again, ordinary and unmarked. Waking is the punishment. You sit up in the tent or the woods, body sore, breath sour, and stigma greets you before the day even begins. This is who you are now, it says. This is all you'll ever be. Even conversations twist the knife. You stand in line at the store and 2 housed strangers talk about the homeless as if you are not inches from them. They use words like nuisance, eyesore, addict. They speak of you as if you are an idea, a problem for city council, a thing to be removed. You want to shout, I am right here, I can hear you, but you stay silent. Because if you reveal yourself, the distance between you and their contempt disappears and you become the very ghost they're already cursing, and work doesn't erase it either. You wash up in a gas station sink, scrub your shirt in a plastic tub, hope no one notices. You show up on time, you try to blend, but stigma hunts you. One rumor, one overheard detail, and suddenly you're suspect. Homeless means unreliable. Homeless means untrustworthy. Homeless means doomed to fail. You carry that silent accusation to every shift, every handshake, every interview. Even among us, stigma divides. The quiet ones scorn the loud ones, muttering about how those people ruin it for the rest, as if respectability will shield them. But the public doesn't care. You can be spotless, sober, disciplined. The brush paints all the same. The fracture is cruelest of all. Stigma doesn't just pit you against the housed, it pits you against your own. And still, beneath the stain, you remain human. You wake hungry, you ache, you dream. The world can shuffle its vocabulary, homeless, unhoused, transient, vagrant. The words change, but the weight doesn't. You carry it every step, every breath. Stigma clings, and yet you breathe anyway. That breathing, ragged and relentless, is defiance. It says, I exist, whether you see me or not. Chapter 8, on violence. Violence is not a stranger here. It lingers like weather, unseen until the wind shifts, then suddenly near enough to taste. You carry it the way you carry the night, always there, always pressing at the edges. It doesn't announce itself politely. It arrives when you're tired, when you're cornered, when you least expect to defend yourself. You don't have to be struck to know it. You feel it in a glance that lingers too long, in footsteps that follow too close, in the silence that drops heavy when laughter fades. Violence is not only the crack of bone or the spray of blood, it is the tightening in your gut when someone bigger decides you don't deserve ease. It is the weight of knowing the world can turn sharp without warning. People repeat survival of the fittest, as if the world sorts itself neatly, as if muscles and grit are the only currency. But violence isn't a contest. It doesn't square off fairly. It comes from the side, from behind, in the dark. It finds you when your guard is down, when your hands are full, when your mind is somewhere else. That's why fear clings close. Fear isn't weakness out here, it's awareness, the nerve endings of the body alerting you that the storm can break at any moment. Fear is not the enemy. The enemy is letting fear rot you from the inside. You walk with it balanced, not banished. You let it sharpen you, not hollow you. Out here, fear keeps you alive, even as it makes the air heavy in your chest. Violence has more than one shape. Sometimes it's loud and obvious, the crash of voices, the slam of fists. Other times it's quiet, the slow crawl of a car with tinted windows, the shadow pacing a step behind, the unspoken threat in the way someone blocks your path. It can be as plain as a shove, or as subtle as being erased by policy, written off as nuisance, swept aside like trash. Violence wears many masks, but the effect is always the same. It reminds you that you are small in someone else's eyes. And it isn't constant. That's the thing. Days can pass in calm. Nothing touches you. No one notices. Then, out of nowhere, the air changes and you feel it near. Violence doesn't have to land to do its work. Sometimes the closeness alone is enough to leave your hands shaking long after. So you move differently. You learn to choose your ground. You sit where you can see the exits. You keep things near at hand, tools that can be explained away but carry another purpose if the moment demands it. A stick for walking, a bar for digging, a knife for food, but the sharpest protection is invisibility. You learn to fade into the background, to slip through the cracks, to be forgettable. The less you are seen, the less you are chosen. But invisibility has limits. Sometimes a sound slices through, a scream that is not laughter, not teenage games in a parking lot, but something deeper, rawer. That sound drags you up, because whatever else you do to stay hidden, there's a line you cannot cross. To sit still while another voice breaks the night is its own kind of violence. And if you do nothing, that silence will follow you. That scream will haunt your dreams and your days, reminding you that someone called out and you stayed safe. Violence doesn't only wound the body, it humiliates. It reminds you how quickly you can be made small, how fast dignity can be stripped. That humiliation often lasts longer than bruises. It settles into you, whispers in quiet hours, leaves you questioning your own strength. Survival, more often than not, means swallowing that humiliation whole. Pride has to bend if you want to live another day. But even when you walk away without marks, violence leaves fingerprints. The nervous system remembers. It wakes you at night with shadows, with phantom teeth on your throat, with engines revving behind your ribs. You carry ghosts of moments that ended without blood but felt close enough. Survival doesn't erase them. It only means you've learned to keep moving with them, trailing behind. History itself is violence stitched together, nations built on conquest, families broken by fists, streets scarred by riots and wars. People don't want to admit it, but the surface of the world is thin. Scratch it and you see the brutality underneath. For most, illusions are enough to hide it. But when you live outside the walls, you live in the raw version. You see it plain, so you avoid. You step off certain roads. You move away from certain groups. You trust the gut that says not here, not tonight. Instinct is worth more than strength. It is not superstition, not ritual, just the body telling you where safety lies. You follow it, you let it guide you clear before trouble fully takes shape. Even then, safety is never absolute. Violence is sudden, unpredictable. That is its power. But unpredictability doesn't mean you are powerless. It means you live awake. You keep breathing even with the hum of danger always near. The ones who've never been here think violence is about winning. They think it's about fists, about proving something. But survival isn't a scoreboard. It's about endurance. It's about disappearing before the blow lands or swallowing your pride when it means another sunrise. It's about knowing when to make yourself small and when to stand because silence would cost too much. The truth is, violence gives peace its meaning. Not the peace of governments or treaties, but the peace of small things. A night that passes without interruption, a patch of ground where you sleep unseen, a morning where you wake whole. That peace is fragile, but holy. You learn to treasure it because you know how easily it can shatter. Violence will always be part of this life. It doesn't fade. It waits just beneath the surface. Out here, you don't pretend otherwise. You learn its signs, its smell, its weight. You understand that survival is not about being the strongest, but about being alert, being invisible, bending your pride when you must, and rising when silence would leave you haunted. For those who feel small, for those who live under that constant hum of fear, know this: you are not weak. Fear is not weakness. It is the proof that you're alive, still here, still moving. And in a world where anything can happen, survival itself is defiance. That's the truth of violence, not glory, not victory, just the pulse of the world laid bare and the will to keep breathing through it. Chapter 9, on Defiance. Defiance is the ember that refuses to die. It is the raw spark in a soaked log smoldering against all odds. When you're stripped of address, paycheck, belonging, and place in line, defiance whispers, "You are still here." The world keeps trying to erase you, reduce you to a stereotype, to a cautionary tale, to a body under a bridge. But you don't vanish so easily. Defiance doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quieter than a breath. It's the act of rising when despair wants you pinned. It's the stubborn insistence that your story isn't finished yet. Defiance grows in small corners, the clean shirt against expectation, the walk with head unbowed when others want you looking at the ground, the refusal to accept that your worth is measured by a balance sheet. People will pigeonhole you, homeless, bum, drifter, addict. They'll sum up your entire humanity in a single word and spit it out like a seed they don't want in their mouth. Defiance is refusing to swallow that label. Defiance is saying, I am not just this one word. I am alive, and I carry multitudes. It isn't easy. You can regulate your thoughts, train yourself to be kind, to be gentle with your inner voice, and still, doubt sneaks in. Still, the old whispers return. You didn't do enough. You should have worked harder. You failed. Defiance doesn't always defeat those voices, but it answers them. It says, I hear you, but I am still here. Sometimes defiance is against the cops, the ordinances, the stairs. Sometimes it is against yourself. The cruelest jailer you'll ever meet lives in your own chest, that whisper telling you you're not worthy, not lovable, not even worth saving. Defiance is the answer to that whisper. It is the kitchen magnet mantra without a refrigerator to hold it. I am worthwhile. I deserve to dream. It's a strange kind of rebellion to insist on being human when the system wants you invisible. Even small acts become battle lines. Washing your face in a sink when people expect you to stink. Wearing clean clothes when the world assumes you can't. Carrying yourself with dignity when the world assumes you've lost it. To defy stereotype is to stand taller than the image others paint of you. Defiance isn't blind optimism. It isn't pretending things aren't hard. It's choosing to keep heart in a world designed to take it away. People who've never lost their home love to strip dignity from those who have. They treat you like you're garbage, as though losing your footing on money means losing your right to be human. Defiance refuses that verdict. Every day alive in this life is defiance. Every morning you wake up, you're already fighting odds. The statistics would rather you be a number, another invisible casualty of poverty and depression. Yet you breathe, You keep going. Survival itself is rebellion. Existence becomes a protest. There's defiance in smiling at a caseworker who wants to cut your benefits. There's defiance in showing humor at the food stamp office even when humiliation presses in. It's not about pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about meeting it with stubborn courage, saying, "You won't take the last of me." Addiction makes this even sharper. To fight through withdrawal on a sidewalk or in a tent isn't just a personal struggle, it's an act of rebellion. The body writhes, the mind screams, the world tempts you toward oblivion, and still some manage to claw their way back. That grit, that refusal, is pure defiance. And it deserves respect, not shame. Defiance also looks like backbone in a world that demands constant bending. When you're homeless, bending is survival. Bend to the weather, bend to the cops, bend to the bureaucracy. You learn to duck, to yield, to adapt like reeds in the storm. But even reeds have roots. Even reeds can stand firm when it matters. Defiance is choosing when not to bend. To say no to the bottle after years of drowning in it. To say no to the needle. To say no to the voice that insists you are less than. To say no, even quietly, is a revolution. Defiance is not rage without reason. It is survival dressed in stubborn pride. It is the middle finger in the mind when the world says, "You don't belong." It is insisting, "I do belong. I belong here as much as anyone. My worth is not erased by poverty." It's tempting to think defiance must always be loud, but it isn't. Sometimes defiance is simply waiting in line. Sometimes it's swallowing humiliation and walking away intact. Sometimes it's living to fight another day, knowing survival itself is victory. There is defiance in laughter, too, humor in the face of absurdity, the cracked smile when life piles on too much and you still refuse to crumble, a joke told at the wrong time, the dark humor that says, "I see the cruelty, and I will not let it devour me." Self-doubt lingers. It always does. You can be kind to yourself for weeks, then one bad day slams you with all the old accusations. But each time you stand again, each time you insist you're still worth love, you practice defiance. It isn't a single act, it's a lifelong stance. And defiance grows contagious. One person's refusal to disappear can light a spark in another. You see someone fight for their dignity, and you remember you still have yours. That's the secret power of defiance. It multiplies. Defiance is rebellion against erasure, against being reduced to a statistic, a slur, a sidelong glance, against being told by yourself or anyone else that you don't matter, against the silent machinery of a system that wants you ground down. To live is to defy, to keep heart is to rebel, to insist on your worth is to revolt against every force that says otherwise. And maybe that's the core of it. Defiance is love. Love for yourself when no one else offers it. Love for others who struggle beside you. Love for the possibility that tomorrow, even if it bends you, will not break you. You can strip a person of their house, their job, their reputation. You can take their comforts, their safety, their illusions, but you cannot erase their defiance. That ember burns stubbornly. That ember glows. And sometimes that ember lights the whole night.